They were supposed to, but to have a PO drop box for them for correspondence and things like that. Legislature changed that. You now need to have a physical address, including a zip code and a mappable address. Boy Scout camps and other things like that, I guess it was just too hard to draw exclusion zones in the country where there weren't parks and schools and daycare centers. So campgrounds have also been included in the 2,000-foot exclusion zone. They expanded the exclusion zone around schools, parks, daycares, and they've also made it harder for sex offenders who do have children to pick up their children from school. Also, they have to give basically, if they have any internet presence, they have to give all that information to the registration office, not just their ISP and things like that, but if they are on any social networking sites, they've also got to provide that information. Victims' rights, protective orders, domestic violence. Domestic violence includes now a former spouse of a present spouse, so you don't even have to have been related to them, and anyone you've ever dated. So if you dated somebody 20 years ago and you get into a fight with them now, it can still be charged as domestic assault and battery rather than a simple assault and battery. If somebody's got a protective order on you, the judge can order and allow them to check up on where you are via GPS. If they do that, they'll put an ankle monitor on you and you'll have to pay for it. This was sort of one good thing, is that previous domestic assault and batteries don't stay on your record. Well, they'll stay on your record, but they don't convert a misdemeanor to a felony forever. At least with regard to protective orders, they've really expanded the definition of stalking to following with an intent to place a person in fear of death or great bodily injury, to two or more separate acts of unconsented to contact. So if they see you more than 2 times and they don't want to, at least for the purposes of protective orders, that can be stalking. Animals can be included in protective orders, so pets now get included in protective orders. Their custody can be determined by a protective order, but not their ownership. There's now a set of 11 separate factors that a judge has to look at before they can determine bond on a violation of protective order, domestic assault, battery, stalking or harassment cases. And this last section here, this page and a half, is nothing new, but what it did is they took all the statutes that have something to do with victims' rights and making sure that victims stay informed, and making sure that they have as much of a stay as the legislature allows them. It takes that from Title 21 and a whole bunch of different places in Title 22 and Title 57 and puts it in one place in Title 21 in Section 142A. It doesn't add any new laws. It doesn't change anything. It just puts them all in one place. It didn't do it very well. Some of them, they made new statutes and repealed the old ones. Some of them, they moved the statutes, and some of them, they repeated the statutes but didn't do anything to the ones that were still in their original place in the statute books. And the grab bag to round things out. Also, for an adults, escape now includes removal of an ankle monitor. So you're not breaking out of McAllister and getting punished for escape. You can now cut off your ankle monitor and you are liable for just as much time as if you broke out of McAllister. I don't know who this is going to affect, but you can now no longer lewdly molest a corpse, or at least a human corpse, in Oklahoma. There's also a section on human trafficking. Generally, the changes, there were some changes sort of to generally talking more about sex trafficking, but they also included transporting illegals in the human trafficking statute. So there's at least some legislation on sort of the supply side rather than the actual illegal side of things. Anything involved in human trafficking subject to forfeiture unless it's a prostitute and you're a John. Then they're not going to take your car, your house, or your money. This was kind of interesting. They expanded the definition of blackmail to include threatening to report a person to immigration. I think that was mostly in response, and also this one above, it's illegal to keep immigration documents away from somebody. There was a case in here for a while where, I forgot his name, but he brought a bunch of workers over from India and kept them in a box in his factory and took all their passports and everything and basically used them as slave labor. This was meant to address that, but it also brings up some interesting permutations with regard to illegal aliens, where it's blackmail if you threaten to report somebody in order to make them do something for you. It'll be really fun once we start talking about police interrogations. That'll be interesting. This really isn't criminal law, it just bugs me. Last legislative session, the legislature passed a law that was entitled the Drug Trafficker Tax Act, and what it does is if you send anything by Western Union, the state's going to take 5% of what you send. You can ask for that back, and you can tax it if you keep all your receipts. So legitimate business persons can collect their receipts from sending stuff to Western Union and then get that money back at tax time. What it was supposed to do was to prevent the drug traffickers from using Western Union to pass their money, but actually what it is, it's another tax on illegals sending money back home, or, I mean, legitimate immigrants sending money back home, that if they don't file tax returns, then that's just money the state's been able to take from them. But OS, State Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, collects it, but OIDS and the Court of Criminal Appeals gets their cut of the money. If you get this, the one on top there, and can parse it and try to make sense out of it, be my guest. The best I can figure out is that if there's a civil suit against some group exercising their First Amendment rights, then you don't get to talk about all the other First Amendment rights stuff that they've done. You only get to talk about what's actually the subject of the lawsuit. Oklahoma Anti-Terrorism Act. I think this is more sort of feel-good stuff because anything that like that actually gets litigated is going to be litigated on the federal side rather than on the state side. And DAs get to carry guns if it's okay with a district attorney. And the statute of limitation for crimes involving a deadly weapon gets bumped up from 3 years, which is the normal, to 7 years. And that's all I got. Has anybody got any questions? All right, well, thank you. Seriously, if you have questions on criminal law, get in touch with me. I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.